Last time we have stopped at form is none other than emptiness, and emptiness is none other than form. The Heart Sutra is a very short sutra, but it's an extremely important sutra, and its philosophy is so profound. If you understand really in detail the meaning of Heart Sutra, then you have a very good grasp of the knowledge of prajna. Prajna means wisdom. Some people commit it to memory because you have to contemplate and reflect on it all the time. If anybody asks, what is the most important sentence? This is it. Perceive that the 5 skandhas are empty and thereby became free from all suffering. But we already have talked about the 5 skandhas, and we said the 5 skandhas are empty. So we already explained what emptiness means. Empty is not just nothing. Emptiness does not mean nothing. As a matter of fact, emptiness means that there is variety of things. Because of the universe is empty, it allows for existence of all things. So emptiness is not a negative connotation. But then, just saying that the 5 skandhas are empty is not enough to elucidate the main theme of emptiness. So the sutra carry on to explain more about emptiness. Now, first of all, just to recap, what do we mean by emptiness? Does an emptiness mean nothing? When we empty the cup of water, then it's empty, nothing? Emptiness has many characteristics to it. In the Sanskrit language, it's sunyata. It means conditional causation. Everything has causes to its effect. A lot of conditions. So there are causes, and there are, finally, in its finality, it has effects, cause and effects. And in between cause and effects, there are conditions. So everything in the universe is causality. There is no inherent existence of things. It exists because of conditions, because of causality. So don't attach to it. Don't be afraid of life and death. It's conditional causation. We'll continue to explain that. So emptiness is conditional causation. Because of emptiness, there is suffering. Because of emptiness, there are changes. Because of emptiness, everything is impermanent. So impermanent, changeability, conditional causality, suffering. These are the main characteristics of that philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, emptiness. Now, some people say, how does the concept of emptiness help me? They always say me. How does it help me? It helps you to realize conditional causality of the universe. It helps you to let go. It helps you to relieve yourself of torturing yourself in your attachment to materialistic lifestyle. It helps you in a variety of ways, as long as you can apply emptiness to it. So the sutra continue with emptiness. And now it says, form is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than form. And when we say, what is form? Form is the first skandhas of the 5 skandhas, because the sutra says the 5 skandhas are empty. And then it continue later to elaborate on why the 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas, remember, form, or some people say material. Material is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than material, but we say form, which means molecules, protons, atoms, electrons, materials. So the letter 4 relates to spirituality, not to materiality. So what is the world? It's a combination of materiality and spirituality. To the little world, our body is the same. Body and mind. I am body and mind, nothing else. Body is material. Mind is the mentality. So it further elaborate on, we're saying the 5 skandhas are empty. Let's start with the first one, form. Because first one is easier to talk about. You can see form. Your senses interact to form. And there, form not just means materials, it also means sound, frequency, touch, smell. It means many, many things. So we talk about form is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than form. But last time I talked more about emptiness because I said, if you understand emptiness, you will appreciate the whole sutra more and more as you go into detail. So it's worth exploring more into emptiness, into conditional causality, the concept of conditional causality. And you have to bear with me when you are trying to understand the sutra, because once you understand emptiness, the whole cocoon of threads, it's all not tangled together now, it's all analyzed. So you really should spend more time in what is emptiness, what is shunyata, how to perceive the universe with the perspective of conditional causality. We look at it from 4 angles, not just from one angle. When the whole sutra analyzes the universe, it analyzes from both ways, from the negative concept and from the positive concept, from negation and from affirmation. So there's a lot of no eye, no ear, no that, no that. That's from a negative point of view. There's always, it is like that, it is like that. It's from a positive, affirmative point of view. So when you look at the whole universe, you analyze by negation, you analyze by affirmation, you analyze conditional causality by looking from 4 perspectives. I already have explained a little bit of dhammadhatu, conditional arising, same as conditional causality. The first perspective you look at is the whole dhammadhatu is conditional cause for all phenomena. Everything being dependent on everything else, therefore one is in all and all is in one. Many people may not understand all this. What do you mean by all is in one and one is in all? I mean, my teacher always talk about that, but what does it mean? All is in one and one is in all. And usually teachers say, look at the palm of my hand. I have both the white side and the black side, but it's just one hand. Look at the coin, at the head and the tail, but it's just one coin. But that's not enough to understand it. Let's get more into detail. What is dhammadhatu, conditional causality? When I look at the piece of paper, I see cloud in it. I see a tree in it. I see rain in it. I see the sunlight in it. I see the soil in it. A piece of paper comes into being, it's not just a sheet of paper. It's many, many causes put together to constitute that piece of paper. From a tree, it gets into pulp, pulp gets into the factories get into, you name it. So, on the other hand, when you burn a sheet of paper, you may have the illusion of saying, I'm destroying it. Or in literal sense, the paper is dying. The paper is dying because I'm burning it. The paper is dying. We light up a match and burn it up. Then it will become smoke. The smoke will then rise and dissipate into the atmosphere, into the air. And then the heat caused by burning it will enter into cosmos, into the universe, and penetrate into many other things. So that smoke, that piece of paper, turns into smoke, turns into heat. It has a lot of conditional causality in it, not just a piece of paper. And then what happened to the ashes that drop on the ground? The ash of the paper will fall to the ground and become part of the soil to nourish the tree. As far as the smoke is concerned, when it is in the air, it rises up and becomes the cloud. It rises up with heat, it becomes the cloud, and then it mixes with the water moisture, and then becomes rain, and rain falls back into the soil and nourish the whole tree. So there's no limit as far as its changeability, as far as conditional causality of that piece of paper. A limited, restricted view would say that's a piece of paper. But a broad, horizontal view of it is boundless. It's limitless. How can you put a limit on a piece of paper? I see a cloud in there. I see rain in there on that piece of paper. I see a beautiful tree in there. I see some nourishing soil in there. I see the sunlight in there. Don't you see it? And the paper is not afraid of life and death. Because you say the paper is dying, you're burning it, but the paper said, no, I'm not dying. I'm a part of that tree. I have been a part of that tree. I was never born, and for that reason I never die. I just changed my form. I get back to the cosmos. I never die. I've never been born. I'm never afraid of it because I'm changing. I'm just changing my form. I don't know if you understand what I mean. You don't look at a sheet of paper just like a sheet of paper. A sheet of paper has a universe in it. A sheet of paper has the whole world in it. And for that reason, I quote not from a Buddhist Sutra, I quote from William Blake's poem, to see a world in a grain of sand. A grain of sand, there's a world in it, and that goes to my interpretation of a piece of paper. Sand, weathering, rushing on the rock, shattering it, and then it washed the shore. The sand itself will pick up molecules, and that rock is broken further, washed by the waves, the sunlight gets into it, the rain gets into it. There's a whole universe in that grain of sand. And how about heaven in a wildflower? If you explain to your student, I think you should use some Buddhist concept to explain it, because none other can explain it properly. I think, this is the way I think. What do you mean by you see a heaven in a wildflower? How can you see heaven in a flower? You must be crazy. Do you have an illusion? You see heaven in a flower? If you're a poet, you would see clearly that there's a heaven in a flower, not just a wildflower, in any flower. Why? Because a flower is demonstrating 6 virtues, at least 6 virtues, which we call the 6 paramitas. What's the first virtue? Generosity, giving. Generosity in the Sanskrit language, in the Buddhist language, in the Sanskrit language is dana, D-A-N-A, dana. A flower is demonstrating dana, or generosity, or giving, unconditional giving. And then it also has demonstrated discipline in the Sanskrit language is sila, and also has demonstrated tolerance or endurance in the Sanskrit language is called zanti, K-S-A-N-T-I, and is also, a flower is also demonstrating diligence or hard working. In the Sanskrit language is virya, V-I-R-Y-A. Flower is also demonstrating what? Meditation or concentration. In the Sanskrit language is dhyana. And last but not least, a flower is also demonstrating wisdom or prajna in the Sanskrit language. Why did I say that? I can't just arbitrarily put all these words on the flower and say, hey, a flower is demonstrating that. I've got to explain it to you. How? First of all, let's go to the first virtues. How does a flower demonstrate generosity and giving? In the springtime, a rhododendron sprouts from a bud. Red, pink, yellow, you name them. It's giving its demeanor, it's giving its fragrance, it's giving its beauty to the whole world. Not only is it giving its demeanor to the whole world in its conduct, it's giving its pleasure to people who are viewing it. It's giving unconditionally to the whole spring, to the birds, to the bees, to anybody who admired beautification, who admire frequency, who admire nature. And more than that, it's unconditional. You don't have to give any money to receive that. So isn't that giving? It's unconditional free giving to Mother Nature, to everybody in it. So when I look at the flower, I see heaven in it, because by giving and giving and giving, you may entitle yourself, you may qualify yourself after this lifetime is ended. I won't use the word death. There's no such thing. There's no such thing or as death. Nobody can make something suddenly disappeared. It only disappears unconditionally. So don't be afraid of death. It's a continuation of birth, rebirth. So if you are practicing generosity and giving, you are entitled or qualified to go to heaven. So I see a heaven in a flower. Don't you see it? A poet would say, oh. So when you enjoy literature, I always encourage young students to read literature, to read a poem. William Blake. Anybody who appreciates nature, they appreciate a poem, especially a poem of nature. Okay, that's number one. How about number two? It's a flower demonstrating, number two is discipline. What is discipline? Discipline leads to what? Morality. When a flower is growing, what is it growing from? The roots of a tree sends up sap to go to the tree trunk, rises into a bud, and the bud later rises into a flower. It's never intruding into another tree. A flower is always maintaining its own conduct, its own personality, its own demeanor. It's always performed the best it can within that tree. Even when the bee is hovering on the flower, trying to get the nectar out of it, the flower is still giving, is still disciplining, letting the bees to get into it. So it always disciplines itself regarding to giving. It always disciplines itself regarding to its cycle. It always disciplines itself regarding to confinement of its own conduct. When you discipline yourself to a very high degree of morality, you're entitled to go to heaven. So I see a heaven, just from the perspective of discipline and morality of a flower. A flower is demonstrating tolerance. Why? In the snowstorm, in the rain, in the ferocious heat of the sun, it's growing in there. It's never afraid of snowstorm and rain and the wind. Even though its petals may be blown off, it still persists to survive. It has a high degree of tolerance in it, a flower. And even if it's swept down and fall to the ground in the autumn time, it still goes back to the soil as nourishment. Diligence. A flower works its way up, hardworking. The sap goes up, and it's trying to grow and grow and grow, and send its vibrant, its fragrance to the whole world. So it's diligence, hardworking. A flower is hardworking. Fifth, jhana, or meditation, focusing. In the wintertime, it is sitting, meditating inside a bud, in quietude, in peacefulness, in the stillness of its growth. It's hibernating in there. So that's meditation. That's concentration. Last but not least, the wisdom. A flower has its wisdom. It has a whole system, has a whole cycle within that tree, getting the nourishment, sending up the roots, going up the trunk, the sap goes up to every direction, absorbing from the sunlight. It has a system of its own cycle of the whole tree. Prajna. That system is never disturbed. That cycle is always going spring, autumn, winter, summer. It's always going in a cycle, that system. In spite of the weather, it always has its own cycle of wisdom working out its own growth. So when you say a heaven in the wildflower, I can see a heaven in the wildflower. Don't you see it? When I see a flower, I see the sun in it. I see the rain in it. I see the tree in it. When I see a flower, I see boundless, limitless phenomena in it. If you think in that way, you are thinking from the perspective of emptiness as a Dhammadhatu way of thinking. The flower does not die. When you're saying the flower, I'm withering off in the autumn, I'm dying. The flower is not afraid of death because he's saying, no, I'm part of the tree. I'm getting back to the roots to nourish the tree. I'm not dying. I will be reborn again. I'm just changing my form. Just like the wave. The wave is the form. The water is emptiness. The wave is appearing and disappearing. The wave won't say, I'm disappearing, I'm dying. I'm rising up, I'm being born. The wave is never afraid of life and death because the wave identifies itself with the water. It is water, nothing else but water. But we identify ourselves as the wave and not the water. You are Dhammadhatu. You are the whole universe in you. I can see you, the whole universe in you, but you never see that in you. If you know that everything is boundless, everything is conditional causality, you let go. You let go of your torture. You let go of your pain. You let go of your agonizing past. You let go of many things. You're not afraid of life and death. You know you're only changing form. You build up conditions for happy life. Have you ever built up conditions for a happy life? Or you build up conditions for a miserable life? No worry, no death, no sickness, no aging. But we need to build conditions. It's just like a flower building conditions for giving to the whole world. Have you been like a flower, building up all these conditions to present itself in its best demeanor, in the best fragrance, in the best color?